I've been murdered, as well as I've literally canceled as well. Well, okay, not literally, but I do feel the need to address some criticisms I receive from within the trans community and allies on my gender critical series. Not because they're valid, but because I'm annoyed and a little hurt. I was scrolling through my own YouTube comments and Twitter replies recently, as I do because apparently I hate myself and love wasting my finite time on Earth, and I started to get a little frustrated. There was a discussion happening about the very real and terrifying brazenness the gender critical movement has adopted, a discussion about the calls for genocide, slurring people as groomers, suggestions of putting trans and gender nonconforming people in literal camps. But in the midst of all of that, an argument started about why I use the term gender critical as opposed to TERF or fart or whatever permutation Twitter started using in 2023. I've seen ter and term. I'm like, I love when people have conversations about something I propose. Sometimes it even changes my mind, sways me with new information I hadn't considered. But this was not that. And this also wasn't it. The argument went as such. Steelman. They don't call us what we want to be called, so we should never call them what they want to be called. That anytime you call a gender critical person gender critical and not a TERF, you're acquiescing, you're giving in, you're furthering their agenda. By the end of it, I have been called, can you guess? A TERF. A pick-me. Yeah, Little Miss Bashback is really trying to get gender critical people to accept them. That's why I made my 5-hour series about how they are obsessed deranged cultists. I discussed this in that series in the video Inside a Cult Gender Critical Recruitment, but I really only spent a minute on it because it wasn't the point of the video. But I knew people would come at me with criticism over this, so I added it in. Apparently, not enough. Or I guess some people don't have time to watch a 5.5-hour series that's incredibly triggering and horrible to watch. You should still watch it. So let's talk about it. Well, not like let us talk about it, but like let me talk about it. Let's have a conversation. Going back to the gender critical series I made, this is the argument I proposed for why I think we should call gender critical people gender critical or anti-trans activists. Gender critical people say that the term TERF is a misogynistic slur on par with bitch. I'm sure you know, but just in case you've been terminally offline for years, TERF means trans exclusionary radical feminist. Now, while anti-trans activists like to say in public that the term TERF is a slur, sometimes in private they let the mask slip that they don't really care and just use this rhetoric as a tactic to support their claims of victimization. I used to use the term TERF to discuss gender-critical anti-trans activists because I too believed that acquiescing to their demands to respect how they identified was just too bitterly ironic to comply with. Like I couldn't. The petty was too strong within me. Like the idea that they would call me queer, AGP, Tim, the T-slur, train, groomer, troon, freak, monster, but then demand not to be called a trans exclusionary radical feminist because it's too mean it's ridiculous, frankly. But here's why I'm doing it now. And it has nothing to do with how they feel, what they want, what they think. Like, listen, we all know that gender critical means TERF. When I call somebody gender critical, I mean the same thing most people do when they say TERF, and everything that comes along with that. They're basically synonyms now in the discourse if you're a part of it. But when I use the term TERF instead of gender critical or anti-trans activist, immediately I get bogged down in arguments about semantics. And worse, the discussion pivots to how maligned gender critical people are. And not the original discussion, the fact that they're partnered up with Nazis and are trying to eliminate trans people from existence. Who does that derailment benefit? Because it isn't us. If they want to be called gender critical, I'll call them that. It's better than calling them TERFs and then adding a caveat that, well, they're not actually feminists because feminism includes everyone. But that's also a very white take because historically feminist movements have been exclusionary to women of color and queer women. And yes, they call it a slur, but it isn't one. And here's what makes something a slur. And here's what makes something not a slur. Like, Like, it's clear to everyone that engaging in that kind of discussion is not even attempting to advance trans rights or liberation, right? Like, that's just arguing with fascists online about vernacular. Why would I ever want to do that? At this point, the term TERF, it's so loaded and convoluted and serves their goals more than ours when we use it. And the people thinking this issue is solved by calling them feminists appropriating radical transphobes, or farts. I don't know if you think that gives trans liberation an air of legitimacy in the public forums. Maybe you just don't give a fuck about the optics of a woman saying, I just believe sex is real and I want to be safe from men. And then you saying, LMAO, STF, you fart. But like, just FYI, you aren't the one that comes across well to people who don't know what's going on, or to a lot of people who do. Nor is it clear in any way what you're angry about or why. It makes you sound immature, and it literally just reads as misogyny to anyone who doesn't understand what you mean by fart, which is functionally 100% of people alive. I get the desire to be petty, to not give an inch, to not give legitimacy to their cause. I really do. I personally identify as a fucking hater. I just don't think this is doing that. Most people who tell me why they used her for fart, they outright say they're just enjoying being a little childish. And if you know me, you know I love that shit too. Just not about this. This isn't a joke to me. I'm not laughing when I'm having these conversations. Usually I'm kind of a little upset. This isn't a culture war. This isn't a matter of winning. I haven't always wanted to ratio J.K. Rowling. I want real change. And this is a crucial period in the fight for trans liberation, and I'm not playing games. Obviously, humor and diversity of tactics are both important. They're integral. But I'm sorry, fart? Not even funny. Literally, in any way. Maybe if it was clever, it would serve some purpose, but it's not, so it has no use. And it's a bit ironic that the people that call anti-trans activists farts are also some of the same people saying I'm hurting the cause by calling them gender critical. But my reasoning is that I should be doing what's most helpful to the trans movement and most damaging to anti-trans movements. So yeah, I think we should call them gender critical anti-trans activists, or both. And as long as they call themselves gender critical, we should attach every disgusting thing they've ever said to that terminology. Everything they've ever done. Attach that to them. I believe that every time we discuss the gender critical cult, their threats and their violence, how they partner up with Nazis, how they side with homophobes and gay conversion therapists, we should also use the label they use for themselves. Make gender critical synonymous not with their dog whistles, but with their actions, their words, including the things they say when they're in private. Gender critical author's new book celebrated by anti-gay lobby and advocates of conversion therapy. Gender critical anti-trans activist post calls for lynching of trans women. It's revealed she sexually assaulted women in bathrooms. Gender critical rally led by Kelly J. Keane, attended to and supported by Nazis. And maybe when they're accurately associated with who they are and keep company with, they'll get the same reaction that members of the Westboro Baptist Church get when they decide to show up to a protest, just when people hear their name. And if they change terminology again, we do the same. Update every article we've written, every video we've posted, because being able to play the victim is their greatest strength, and the term TERF just doesn't work to expose them for what they are anymore, the way that it used to, if it ever did. But what does expose them? Their own words. And they should have to own them. And if you're actually only using the term TERF out of stubbornness like I was, or using it as a pejorative, I would just suggest you think about it. I'm not going to try and convince you to switch terms outside of this video because I would still just be engaging in useless conversations about semantics online, and I'm not willing to spend my time doing that. In fact, this video is basically me never having to do that again, so making it is going to save me a lot of time in the future. You may be watching this because you told me to stop calling them gender critical, and I replied with this link. If so, hi, welcome to the channel. I'm Caelan Conrad. The one thing I really wanted to address is that I constantly, to this day, and as recently as this week, receive countless tweets and comments demanding that I post versions of the evidence I gather in trans conversion therapy groups without the name censored. Groups like Concerned Parents of Trans and Non-Binary Youth and Gender Critical Women. Groups in which parents discuss how to isolate, abuse, and indoctrinate their children out of their queer and transness, as well as other anti-trans propaganda. Here's an example of a post a gender critical parent would make about their child in these private groups.
There is disgusting hormone gel in my bathroom. Be still my tongue. Resist urge to substitute aloe vera when she's not looking. I just have to suck it up like every other day of this crazy, crazy life.
The responses from other gender-critical women, especially parents, were disturbed.
If the hormone gel doesn't have a distinct smell/color/texture, I don't see why there would be an issue if you empty out the bottle and replace the contents with common body gel. Just wait until she runs out of the current one and buys another to be able to ensure that the bottle weight's the same so she doesn't find out.
To have such a poisonous thing out in a common space like that drastically increases the risk of accidental exposure. I'd throw a fit about it for my own sake before I worry about trying to talk anyone out of a cult. The whole bathroom might become contaminated with it.
Substitute it. Why not?
Empty out half and replace with aloe vera.
Luckily for this trans man, you can't just switch out the gel. The packaging doesn't work like that. It's not like a pot of lotion. Screenshots like these are used throughout my gender critical series. It's pretty painful and disturbing to go through, let alone watch, all compressed into a couple hours for each of the 3 parts. But instead of focusing on what these trans youth are going through, quite a few people turned their ire towards me. Here are some of the comments I've received over the last year.
Post with the names, or you're just enabling them.
Why censor? How is protecting child abusers any different than being one? Everything that happens to these kids is on you.
Don't hide their names. Let's see if they're so brave without anonymity. Not gonna lie, kind of a piece of shit move for you to care more about their privacy than trans kids' lives.
These kids would be better off if their parents were dead, and you're just ensuring they can continue to hurt them. They'd be better off if you weren't alive, too.
Nice, thanks. Tried it once as a teen. Didn't stick clearly. Maybe you're watching this because you said something similar to me, and I linked this video, in which case, hi, that was legitimately awful of you, and here's why. So many of these people are parents or family members of trans people. Many outright state in the screenshots which family member they've shown up to complain about being sucked into a cult. But I can't go through every post they made, every reply to every post they've made, the posts they've made in other groups. I have no way to be sure that they don't have a young trans person in their life that they're posting about. So I have no way to ensure that I would not then be outing that young trans person should the tweet or video gain attention, which almost all my gender critical posts do because they expose the horror of gender critical ideology. So let's look at the situation. Posting on Facebook isn't a crime, nor is being anti-trans. And at any point, a state may simply decide that being on hormone replacement therapies is illegal. So what if, using this example, I decided to post about this woman with her full first and last name and photo visible? What exactly do you think is going to happen? Because if this young trans person isn't out at school or work or wherever, they might be now. Hey, isn't that your mom in this screenshot? Is this about you? Or what if that person didn't have a legal prescription for HRT because their state had banned it recently and they had to get it through other means? Now the only person who is harmed is the trans person, potentially setting them up to deal with legal issues or worse. I tried to warn this woman's trans son, but I wasn't able to find his name. The people in his town, city, school, work, they would have been. And almost every time I brought this up to people, like 95% of the time, they immediately apologize. One person deleted their entire Twitter account. And I know why. Because realizing that in the name of defending trans kids, you've completely disregarded their autonomy and safety in pursuit of petty internet justice, that feels shameful. They're like, oh shit, my bad. I didn't even think of that. Genuinely my bad. Occasionally, though, someone just doubles down. I feel like double is putting it lightly. Trans kids deserve the right to come out when they choose, not when I decide to out them as collateral damage.
Well, the ones with cis kids don't have the right to act like monsters, consequence-free.
And how do I make sure? How many trans kids are you willing to harm so you can harass someone? Because the answer for me is 0.
The gender-critical cry-bullies make their trans kids their entire personality. So they'll tell you, sorry that you're too busy being a passive observer to actually do anything about gender criticals.
So to address this, I'll say what I told this person, that while gender critical people are obsessed with their kids' gender identity, they aren't going to say it in every single reply or comment they leave. My stance is that any trans kid being harmed by my work to protect trans kids is too many. And what are people going to do with these people's names? Really? Like, I want to know. Harass them on the internet, call their work and get them fired. And who gets to deal with the fallout from that? Not angry people on Twitter, that trans kid does. And as we know, child abusers take out their frustration or rage on their child, a child that is now stuck living with a parent who not only hates trans people and kind of, at this moment, with reason, but now will be pushed so far into gender-critical self-victimhood that any hope for change is diminished, if not completely destroyed. These are people's lives. And while I personally would not shed a single tear for a gender-critical person losing their livelihood, in fact, I do whatever the opposite of shedding a tear is, it's not about them. Just like my using the term gender critical isn't about them. In fact, rule, if you ever see me saying anything or doing anything and think, isn't this just helping that bigot Caelan is specifically calling a bigot and admonishing? Maybe try and think past that. Think about why I might be doing something differently than you would expect and consider that maybe I'm not a secret TERF. Because I'm not. I'm not acquiescing to people trying to hurt trans people, ever. I think through these things so carefully, so methodically, because I spent a year inside these spaces, every single day, hours of exposing myself to the worst of what they have to say, a lot of it about people just like me. And I hate them. Their cruelty and their violence makes me ill. But I expose myself to it because I truly believe that their greatest weapon is their ability to be perceived as victims by operating through dog whistles. And I think the pain I went through was worth it. I think in the grand scheme of things, I'm just one person, and my comfort isn't more important than the collective good. But what that year did to me, I have never recovered from. And at the time, I did it for like what amounted to $200 a week before taxes. So to have trans people and allies take something I'm incredibly proud of, something that was immensely difficult and traumatizing, and have them use it as a cudgel to try and shame me, to say I'm complicit in the very abuses I'm exposing, nothing has ever made me want to delete my channel more than that. I don't even care that the hours I work often don't make minimum wage unless I take a sponsor. Journalism, art, social justice, amplifying the voices of those who learned really early on that they should keep quiet, that they don't deserve better, that is what matters to me. But there's this thing that happens when you put yourself out there like I do, when you're vulnerable and honest and real, where people think they have the right to speak to you like you're theirs to command and control. As if what I work on, what I say, what I do is up for public debate, up for the public to decide and demand, to dictate. It's not. Let's get that one thing straight. This is my work, my art, my life. If you think it should be done differently, do it yourself. I taught myself how to do everything I've done through online tutorials. I have no education in anything to do with what I do. So if you want to make a video about why we should call them farts, if you want to dox a woman and her trans son, I literally could not stop you. But something tells me the second these people have to put in an ounce of labor, they'll decide maybe they don't feel so strongly about it after all. They're willing to spend an hour calling me a TERF and telling me to KYS, but you won't see them at a protest. You won't see them putting in the effort to make things better for trans people. In fact, scrolling through their replies on Twitter, you can see the opposite. And as a person with terminal annoying, I support your right to be you. I just don't need to know about it. Like, I get why people do this. They feel powerless and afraid and angry. They want to lash out at someone, anyone, to regain some sense of autonomy in the face of fascism. But when the way you do that is by harassing trans adults and outing trans youth, you've gone so far past understandable anger that I have nothing left to say but stop. Being harassed and denigrated by members of my own community will always be 100 times more painful than some random chud who says, "You're a groomer, man," to me, because community is what matters to me. Making the world less confusing and isolating is what matters to me. So I love you all. Probably even the haters, even if I'm loving you from behind a block, because you're somehow more annoying than I am. If you want to support me, I'm on Patreon. I'm poor. She's not starving, but she's not living. One day, I'd like to have my face peeled off and put back on in like a femme way. So feel free to support me just for that. Podcast, boosting small creators. See you soon, besties. I need to go get fucking high.